backed by the media, backed by the ex-fighters, backed by the organisation in general, actually thought that him getting into the octagon, going nose to nose with Dricus Du Plessis, chimping out and spitting the N-word all over the place, was going to intimidate him. So keeping with the theme of politics being infused into MMA, we saw this transpire last weekend again. Dricus Du Plessis defended his UFC middleweight title against Strickland, but it seems like the mentally ill left-wing propagandized media felt it more important to talk about a t-shirt that he had worn in support of Donald Trump. In the words of these mentally ill purveyors of propaganda, the superstar stirred up a ferocious debate after wearing a t-shirt with the words "Trump prefers champions," before going on to explain his support for the US president, as well as Elon Musk. Most MMA fans saw this and moved on to the fight and didn't think anything of it. But there was a huge corner of the internet and the media that had a meltdown because of the implications of why he is supporting Donald Trump. Huge accounts over on X with almost 500,000 subscribers and followers were putting out statements like this about the South African champion. Dricus Du Plessis bending the knee to Trump and Elon is embarrassing. For an athlete who built his brand on national pride and representing South Africa, this move is incredibly divisive. Doubling down on that statement, they also went on to say that the issue with supporting Dricus is that he's using his platform to spread hate. He's aligning himself with bullies like Trump and Elon, so backing him means endorsing that. Are people really comfortable with that? And this is a huge profile over on X, as I said, 300,000 or 400,000 people following this mentally ill person, by the way. Just go and look at the pronouns and the flags that are in the bio. It's usually an indication of severe mental illness. And in the context of this white South African spreading hate, using his platform to spread hate, I don't think that wearing a t-shirt that says Trump prefers champions spreads any sort of hate. And in the context of MMA, all we have to do is look at previous African champions, Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, and the majority of the African fighters that are on the roster. This profile talks about bullying. Every single one of these black African lads that are in the UFC do nothing but talk about being bullied. Everything has to be brought back to that victim-conscious mentality. Israel Adesanya spoke about being bullied. Themba Gorimbo did it. Abdul Razak Al Hassan did it. Sadiq Youssef did it. Every single one of them fall back on the cushion and the propagandized version of victim consciousness, talking about bullying. I've never once heard Dricus Du Plessis talk in that manner in any way, shape or form. We had this profile here with almost 1 million subscribers say things like, as someone who was a supporter and a fan of Dricus Du Plessis, I'm disappointed. You endorsed Trump attacking your country based on misinformation and propaganda. We all know a lot of things are rotten in the country. However, things Trump is accusing us of at the moment are a lie. Come on, man. So what exactly is propaganda and misinformation according to this user? And according to a lot of people that are in the comment section, really spitting vitriol and venom at Dricus Du Plessis for propagandizing and spreading misinformation. So what is that? Of course they're talking about the atrocities that is taking place underneath the nose and before the eyes of every man, woman and child in South Africa. And that is the obliteration of the white farmer.
I will be happy to move. That will be nice. And Afrikaner blood. I want the blood of an Afrikaner. Bring the blood of an Afrikaner. I want it.
Numbers vary from really small if you're listening to the mainstream media talk about it, or if you go to the extreme end of that, the numbers can become extremely huge. But what we do know for a single solitary fact is that white people and white farmers in general in South Africa are under attack from a corrupt Marxist government who are funding the black gangs that are going out there and indiscriminately ending the lives of white people for no other purpose, just because of the fact that they are white. Because the statistics coming from the police department, regardless of how trustworthy that can be, usually involve the fact that there isn't a robbery taking place here. This is about the colour of their skin.
So we look at murder, attempted murder, rape, robbery. That's what these are. There's no stock theft involved. There's no theft of normal property. This is only violent crime.
And in terms of the numbers that are coming out of there that aren't been heard and apparently are misinformation and that are propagandized, except for you can actually see with your own eyes the white crosses that go on forever representing the white farmers that have been ended at the hands of communist Marxist government who cheer this stuff on and with the help of other political organizations actively call for more and more of this disgusting torture to be put upon the white people of South Africa.
Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa.
We have more outlandish attacks on Dricus Du Plessis. Again, not too many people within the MMA world speaking about this. I guess it's a little bit too uncomfortable for them to talk about it, but we'll have a shot at it here. This ex-user says that propagandist Dricus Du Plessis doesn't represent South Africa. He represents Afreform and white supremacy and imperialism. Of course he does. Isn't that what all white people represent? Isn't that what they teach the white kids here in Ireland, the 5-year-olds? And that we have to constantly bend the knee and apologise and be at the behest of our brand new neighbours who were shipped in at 3 o'clock in the morning via bus. Communist tactics from a government like what we're seeing in South Africa to a lesser extent. Some people talk about the ethnic cleansing of the South Africans. And again, we're going to have a look at a Twitter handle that'll give us the breakdown on the numbers. But in terms of ethnic cleansing, to see that many white people being eradicated purposefully is actually disgusting. We speak all the time about the Free Palestine movement and how every small town across England and Ireland and the Western world have to get out and protest and march for the people of Palestine. What about the people of South Africa? Is there any reason why you can imagine that these protests aren't taking place for the people of South Africa? I guess it's not a fantastic look for when you're sipping your latte on a Sunday afternoon to be protesting for your own people. You have been programmed not to put your own people first, never to show sympathy for your own people, and always be of the multicultural mind. A real job has been done on white people. And eventually, us in the Western world, Ireland, UK, Europe, are all going to be in that exact same boat, because what we're actually witnessing and enduring right now mightn't be an aggressive ethnic cleansing, but it's certainly a slow, soft, lethargic ethnic cleansing, because we are seeing the demographics change in Ireland, where now in certain large cities, Irish people are under 50% of the population. So is what is happening in South Africa a precognitive look into what can be happening right here on our own doorstep? That's why we have to talk about it. That's why we have to act out. I'm much more inclined to get out there and march for what's happening over there as opposed to what's happening in the Middle East. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Dricus has been showing us for years who he is. Again, this is the real propaganda that has been propped up by mainstream media. When you look back to headlines like this, white fighter is branded racist after accusing UFC superstars Francis Ngannou and Israel Adesanya of being fake Africans. He is trying to erase them from history. You're telling me that this mainstream newspaper are not only pumping out lies because none of this was actually said, but this didn't change the narrative and try shift the narrative on purpose to make the white South Africans some sort of evil colonizer? That wasn't the purpose of Israel Adesanya constantly pushing that narrative and the media eating it up. So in the wake of the corrupt South African government announcing that they were going to go through and follow through with the expropriation of private property, in other words, they were going to be able to go out there and just take the land, as if they weren't doing that already, just under the table. Now we have legislation to say that we can just do it, and that's it, nobody can stop us.
Is the white landowner. He urges his followers to take back what was stolen from them.
The white minority which took our land by force. You must say enough is enough. We are taking the future into our own hands.
Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and pretty much the world who actually understand and do the research and look into what's going on there and not believe every single headline that comes out of the mainstream media about this topic. Consistent with President Trump's executive order on addressing the egregious actions of the Republic of South Africa, the US Department of State is coordinating with the Department of Homeland Security to promote and prioritise humanitarian relief, including consideration of eligibility for admission and resettlement to the United States for Afrikaners in South Africa who are victims of unjust racial discrimination. So Donald Trump went onto social media and he said that South Africa is confiscating land and treating certain classes of people very badly. By certain classes, of course, he means white people. It is a bad situation for the radical left media who doesn't want us so much to mention it. A massive human rights violation is happening for all those to see. The United States won't stand for it. we will act. Also, because of this, I will be cutting off all aid to South Africa until further notice. One of the most vocal refugees, if you'd like, from South Africa, living in America, is a guy called Jason Bartlett. Does great work over on X and on TikTok, and he broke down the numbers and the atrocities that are being perpetrated on the white people of South Africa just the other day, and it was mind-boggling.
In 2023, there was 296 farm attacks, resulting in 49 murders, which is 1 per week. In 2019 to 2022, there was 1,402 farm attacks, resulting with only 66 people being convicted, leaving 95% of farm attacks and murders unresolved. In the third quarter of 2023, there was 88 farm attacks, leaving 13 farmers brutally and savagely murdered. The murder rate for farmers in South Africa is 158 to 100,000, which is in contrast to the murder rate of South Africa, which is 61 in 100,000, making farmers the most targeted group globally.
Absolutely insane and disgusting numbers. And to be honest with you, seeing the way Dricus Du Plessis has held himself in the public eye, from before he was in the UFC, then after signing the contract, joining the biggest MMA outlet in the world, then to becoming the middleweight champion and going on to defend that belt. He has very sparsely talked about the atrocities that is taking place in his home country. To have that voice and to have that loud microphone to scream from the top of the world so someone might actually listen and not use it and be very calm and wait for the right time is a real testament to not only him as a champion but to him as a man. I think back to that playful little back and forth that I had with Chael Sonnen about Israel Adesanya stepping into the octagon, having somewhat of a mental breakdown, spitting venom and verbal insults and using the N-word ad nauseum towards Dricus Du Plessis. And Chael had said that Dricus showed that he was frightened that night, and everybody knew it. He took a back step and he realised, oh my God, I don't want to get into the octagon with this guy. I pushed back on that and I said it was the complete opposite. And as it transpired, I was proven right, because what he did to Israel when he finally got his hands on him was absolutely amazing and delicious, and he still managed the decorum of not going crazy and reciprocating that vile vitriol that Israel and every other African seems to put out there towards the white African fighter. And maybe just towards white fighters in general. There were so many outlandish outbursts from Israel Adesanya talking about Dricus Du Plessis. He famously said that Dricus didn't experience Africa the way I did. He was living behind a gated community, behind high walls and cameras. Of course he was. Of course he was living behind them walls, because your corrupt government actively pursue and pay people to go out there and attack people like Dricus Du Plessis and his family. Israel went on to call him a cracker a number of times. He went on to say that he would drag Dricus's carcass across South Africa. And he went on to say that he was more African, and when I step foot in South Africa, you just know. Like, okay. But now when I look back at that interaction with 2020 Vision, I think about the fact that Israel, backed by the media, backed by the ex-fighters, backed by the organisation in general, actually thought that him getting into the octagon, going nose to nose with Dricus Du Plessis, chimping out and spitting the N-word all over the place, was going to intimidate him. Dricus Du Plessis is an Afrikaner who lives under the boot of a Marxist communist government who actively promote the extermination of his people. He also lives under the threat of extreme violence, the likes of which we've never seen. And Israel thought that he could get in there and intimidate him. And wouldn't you know, when the rubber met the road and these two men actually faced each other in the octagon, and it ended with Dricus Du Plessis taking the back very easily of Israel Adesanya and choking him. All that big talk of dragging carcasses and that you were going to show him who he was, all went out the window. And all that was left was pleasantries. Because you and your people, who can only exist in a victim-conscious world, when the tables are turned and you're silenced, that's it. You've got nothing to say. And when the dust settles, the majority of the media, the Twitter users, the African fighters in the UFC will all fall back to apartheid is the problem for everything, and we are defending our land, and misinformation and propaganda. So I'm sure that we will continue to see propaganda and narrative and misinformation be put out into the ether, but it won't be by people like Dricus Du Plessis or Donald Trump. Everything that has been said in relation to the situation that's happening in South Africa is 100% correct, needs to be highlighted, and I'm absolutely delighted that it's kind of front and centre in terms of news cycle and trending topics over on social media. This corruption must stop. I think that Dricus Du Plessis has shown massive impulse control, unlike most other Africans, because having that large voice and being the middleweight champion of the world within the UFC organisation, you want to roar and scream like every other guy that came before you, but a more measured approach has been taken by Dricus, and I think it's amazing. Let me know if any of that made sense. Maybe hit like, subscribe and share down below. I appreciate you. Cheers.